All right, and we are live. Welcome everybody to Lubbock Compact Live for Wednesday, September 27th. Man, oh man, do we have a show today. First and foremost, I'm your host, Adam Hernandez, here with my co-host, Josh Shankles, and this is Lubbock Compact Live. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We've got some worrying information, but before we get into the show, I want anybody out there to tag your city council people if you want to, message them, text them, do whatever you got to do, because I don't want anybody, city council included, school board included, to say that we were saying things behind their back or we did not give them a chance to chime in. So ideally, you would have your city council people and your school board people come right here and put their comments in the comment section. We can have the discussion right now. Will they do that? I don't think so. But I would like everybody to share this with your city council people. You can do it after the show is over. You can do it whenever you want to. But I'm giving them the chance because we're going to be talking directly about some situations that happen with city council and some situations that are going on with at least one school board representative. And just don't want them to feel like we're not giving them the opportunity. All right, we do ours open and in public over here. And when we need to call things out, we'll call things out. And that's just what it is. But without further ado, Josh, I'll let you start us out a little bit light. Let's get into a couple of the lighter things, and then we're going to get right into it. So let's go.
Yeah, man. September was a very eventful month. We got a full agenda show here to get through. Okay, so right off the bat, we wanted to update people on the city budget. This was something that we covered in August's show as our last show that we really detailed out, but takes two votes on a city budget. And so there were a couple of cycles, and some of this bled into September. The real things that I wanted to bring to your attention and have some discussion about and some reminders for our audience was that there were really no changes in the budget at all from its first reading to its second reading. It stayed exactly the same, but I did think it was interesting that a couple of city council members took the opportunity to discuss this budget in a little more detail on the dais in their first meeting in September. And particularly council persons Joy and McBrayer had some discussion on this. And so with her time, Councilwoman Joy took a lot of time to speak to her constituents and the people of Lubbock about something that I imagine the city council puts up with perennially, which is when a budget comes out, there's a lot of complainers that want to talk about this and want to complain about their tax burden. And it's like a reasonable and justifiable position to have in many ways. And at a budget time, that's the time to be having that discussion. But in her comments, Councilwoman Joy was kind of really speaking to a lot of the bad faith actors out there that don't really understand how lean our city actually is. And so I thought it was interesting that she took some of her time to give a little public education. If you don't watch a lot of city council meetings, this is something that happens in that chamber sometimes. And Councilwoman Joy has gotten to be somebody that is often a voice of reason and kind of doing some of this educational work. And so I really appreciated her comments to the public, although there is always a way that they can kind of get on their high horse. The other person that made comments about this budget in the second reading was Councilperson McBrayer. And his comments were a little incongruous because he kind of gave a long soliloquy about the necessity of everything that is contained in the budget, but similarly made the case that with Lubbock's residents struggling with the current economic conditions and factors that they are, lots of families are struggling, particularly working families. It's like an appropriate time for the city to tighten up its belt too and not be asking anything extra out of the people. And it's like, well, Councilman McBrayer, it's your budget, man. And like, you just acknowledged that all this stuff was necessary. And in fact, on the show, we've repeatedly talked about how we're now seeing the results of underinvesting in our city over a period of time. And we cannot dig ourselves out of that hole in any hurry either. And so, the comments were, on the one hand, very educational, appropriate. On the other hand, I thought a little bit weird and sort of politics speak, where they're trying to glad hand and say, if I had it my way, I'd give you everything you want, but I don't have it my way. And so ultimately, Councilperson McBrayer voted against this budget in the second reading. It otherwise passed 6-1, and we're now operating under the new budget. Adam, anything to add to that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty interesting to have a council person vote against the budget. I don't know that I've seen that. Maybe I could be wrong. I don't think I've ever seen it. But look, we've said it many times on this show. If we want things for our city, we're going to have to pay for them. And we're growing at a very fast rate. I try to put this in as simple terms as I can. We're growing at a faster rate than the state average. I don't know how to say it more plain than that. We're not growing like a regular city. And so, as Josh just said, we're underfunding so many things. So many of you out there know that because you're dealing with it on a day-to-day basis in different areas. And so we're going to have to spend the money, and we're eventually going to have to get to a point to where we're actually providing things for the people in our city at a high level, because it happens in some instances, but in some instances it's not. And it's not on the staff. It's not on the city staff. The city staff does the absolute best with what they are given. And so if they're given more, they will do more, and they will be able to increase the level of service for around the various things that we all would like to work smoothly. Trash collection, animal control, you name it, road repairs, whatever it is. And so this, like Josh said, it becomes a situation where it's frustrating, because it's like some of these folks want to choose talking points over the reality of the situation we live in. I get it that your constituency, Mr. McBrayer, or many of them, or many folks in your party, because I know that you're a member of the Republican Party, many of those folks who, by the way, respectfully, don't pay attention to city politics in the first place. Don't pay attention to how the city operates in the first place. Let's just put that out there. But a lot of those folks just want to have that talking point. We've heard it over and over and over again. And so I understand the tendency to want to use that same talking point, or to appeal to that constituency or your peer group or whatever the case may be. But we live in the real world. We live in what's really happening here in Lubbock. And it's just disappointing to see that kind of take precedent over what really needs to happen. But, it is what it is. It got passed, and so no harm, no foul.
Yeah. No, and the only other thing that I would add to this, because it is a position of the show and something that we think the residents of Lubbock really need to fundamentally understand, is the essential underlying problem of our budget is our city's sprawl, how spread out we are as a city for our size, for our tax base. This creates a fundamental inefficiency in our city that leads us to, we're very locked in on how much it costs to run this city. And so that's another thing that we're going to have to attend to over time. Okay, moving on to the next thing, something we've discussed on the show a whole bunch, that is the Leprino Foods facility, now under construction way outside of the East Loop of Lubbock. This will be mozzarella cheese manufacturing plant. It will have upward of 600 jobs. It's under construction now. This was part of a tax abatement program where Leprino is getting a tax abatement to locate their facility here. They had a community meeting in September to engage with folks from communities all over Lubbock at May Simmons Community Center, and representatives from the company came and presented about what the organization is and what their mission is, and kind of how they're going to be, working with the community. There's been some contention around this, especially because One of the features of this plant is that the wastewater from it, the excess water from the manufacture of cheese, will ultimately be treated and then discharged into the Canyon Lake system right at Dunbar Lake. Dunbar? Yeah,
Lake
I think so.
6, yeah.
Lake
Yeah.
6. Anyway, and this has raised a concern with the community because, of course, this is one of the jewels of communities in and around the side of Lubbock. So representatives were on hand to answer questions about that. We attended that meeting and kind of watched that play out. We know that there have been groups organized around Eastside industrial zoning, much like Lubbock Compact, somewhat organized around this issue. Anyway, and so this community meeting happened. We, want to remind folks that Loprino seems to be a very good actor as far as a business community partner. They have an exceedingly good track record on environmental issues. This plant is very well suited for our local economy. We're going to get to keep and bank that water resource from that will cut down and greatly reduce the water cost of the facility itself. And Loprino also has a good track record of otherwise investing in community efforts and being good volunteers and good community partners and good donors. And so our position has been that this was a good fit, a good location, and doesn't stand to have the type of environmental impact that a lot of industrial applications in Lubbock have had and do have. But of course, we completely understand and recognize the historical record here and understand why people would react so strongly to something that they might not fully understand the impact of. And so I was glad to see this meeting. I thought the representatives from Loprino comported themselves pretty well. It was good to see a lot of our community partners at this meeting, and hope that this begins a robust dialogue, something that we see often lacking in partnerships between business and communities that they're situated in. But this is something that we too will be keeping our eye on and want to see play out as anticipated. Adam?
Yeah, so we've gone into this in depth on another show. You can look for that. Just a quick, I guess, refresher. We've talked about this a whole lot. I actually talked about this with the Dunbar group prior to this meeting. I will say kudos to the Loprino folks for showing up and doing that. That's more than we get out of any of these other industrial sites. We've not seen them one time, and they've been here for decades and decades. And you still have some people in the community that swear that they're good neighbors, and they have not been, and they've yet to show up to one community meeting about their facility. So I will say that the water issue, there had been some misinformation about that. And the long story short of it is, because of state law and federal law and all sorts of things, you cannot just dump chunks of cheese into a federally protected body of water, especially any body of water that's a natural body of water. You can't do that. You just can't. And especially not a federally protected body of water like the Canyon Lake system. All right. That's number one. Number two, the facility itself has a water treatment plant on site. The water that's going into Lake 6 is stream quality. It's going to actually be better quality probably than the water that's sitting in the Canyon Lakes right now, because we've seen that. So it's going to be stream quality water. It will go into Lake 6 at first. There's going to be a new lake called Lake 7, or the Jim Bertram Lake, that's southeast of the city. That's going to eventually be the place where that goes, which is going to be a water source that's going to keep itself up, that we're going to continuously be able to use as a city for all of our water needs. And so that's the long story short about the water part. We've talked about everything else in great detail, so I'm not going to do that here. We can go on.
Cool. Okay. Well, then the next thing to update folks on is the ultimate outcome of something that we've been following for a couple of months now, really almost the entire existence of our organization, which is the adoption of the Unified Development Code. This is kind of like the last step before the rubber really hits the road. Just to catch people up, we'll remind folks that this has been a very long process. It is a outcome of something that was called for in Lubbock Plan 2040. Our development codes needed to be updated, modernized, and made consistent. Consultants were hired to do that. We had been engaged in this process over a long time in many, many areas. It added and contributed a great deal to this Unified Development Code along with our community partners. Ultimately, this was adopted by the City Council earlier this year, with the caveat that they knew that there were still some things that they wanted to, it was a really weird adoption process because they knew there were some things they wanted to change, but I think they just wanted to get it on the books and then come back for the last little bits. We've done extensive shows about this. We know that this process was not perfect. It had a lot of good outcomes. It was disappointing to see how much it was whittled down from some of its original protections. And of course, we were always still advocating for an amortization policy to go into this, which is a policy process by which conflicting uses, particularly industrial zoning next to residential neighborhoods, can be resolved by a variety of ways. Anyhow, after it was adopted, there were some known changes that were needed. And because of the legal structure of how these types of things are done, it needed to go through our Planning and Zoning Commission first. And there needed to be a public hearing to initiate all of these final amendments. And so there was a public hearing. We attended that public hearing. It was kind of, we talked about this on a show. It was kind of bullshit. They were calling for amendments from the floor. Nobody kind of had really super control of the meeting. It was unclear what was supposed to happen. Ultimately, yourself, myself, Dora Cortez submitted amendments to this that really speak to these issues that we have long advocated for. Ms. Cortez was asking for changes to abandonment clauses and force of nature clauses within that would have been more favorable to communities and more in keeping with our peer cities. You had proposed an amendment to immediately rezone any industrial zoning interior to like Loop 289 that wasn't already occupied or was occupied by an abandoned business. There's an abandoned structure. Immediately rezone that to at least transitional, to prevent the expansion of additional industrial applications interior to the city. And I had proposed our perennial amortization amendment, which we knew was a stretch because it's a complicated thing and it wasn't really fitting, but we, are known for beating dead horses and we're under the gun. So we proposed these amendments. They went to the Planning and Zoning Commission. We watched this meeting. It was exceedingly long. And so now we're into the new bits. So during that meeting, all the various amendments that were proposed by anybody, including a number from the developers, were discussed in detail. Of course, the Planning and Zoning Commission being sat with many developers, and honestly, their amendments being pretty reasonable, this set of them anyway, all of those were accepted. Then they got to the part where they were discussing the citizen amendments, including the 3 that we submitted, and notably one from the Tech Terrace Unit Neighborhood Association that was particularly organizing around, but also the Congress of Neighborhood Associations, Overton, Heart of Lubbock, that was about limiting the maximum height of high density residential to 45 feet instead of the 75 feet that's proposed in the Unified Development Code. And basically this was a provision to, again, as watchers of the show might know, to end these student housing developments that have been proposed in most recent memory in Tech Terrace neighborhood, in the South Overton neighborhood. both of which were defeated. So basically, they wanted to limit the size of buildings like this to 45 feet to keep them more in scope and scale, and prevent them from having to fight these developments as they come up one by one by one by one. Anyhow, so this came up for discussion in planning and zoning, and you know, I don't want to get into the weeds. I'm not going to say, you know, the member said this, that, and the other. The real takeaways here is something that we've seen a lot within the city, which is that the issues of the community end up buried in kind of a administrative chicken and egg game, where we or other community members will bring up a proposal, bring something to these folks, present evidence for the proposal, have allies come and talk to the thing, do a lot of, you know, nuts and bolts advocacy work. And elected representatives, appointed representatives will listen patiently, sometimes impatiently, and be like, well, you know, we don't know. We're not experts. This is just coming to me right now, even though a lot of times that's not true. A lot of times this is after things have been presented to them and presented to them and presented to them, but they haven't done their homework or something, or they don't, nobody's watching. They can get away with so much not watching because they think people aren't watching them when we're watching them. And so they throw up their hands and they're like, we don't know. What about you, city staff? You're the experts in this field of interest. And the city staff goes, well, nobody told us. You're the ones that have to direct us to prepare things for you. And so nobody told us, even though that's a charitable interpretation of what happens in City Hall. And I would be suspicious, knowing how skilled our city staff is, I would be suspicious that that's the full extent of the story. And so issues like amortization, like the proposals of Ms. Cortez, like your own amendment, end up kind of shuffled about in a sort of hand-washing game and buck-passing game of nobody's done their homework, nobody understands, feigned ignorance around an issue, and so it just ends up evaporating, right? And so that's what happened in planning and zoning about our issues, about the, this is going to be a longer part of this segment. About Tech Terrace's amendment, they denied they didn't recommend approval of any of our amendments. And they also didn't recommend approval of the unit association's amendments because, and this is another thing that we've witnessed a lot in this, is their reasoning was entirely capricious. There was no reasoning, it was their feelings. And by their feelings, I mean the developers' feelings. Because a lot of people thought this was a pretty reasonable sort of thing, especially since it had a provision within it to allow going back up to 75 feet in special use, you know, a city council vote to allow that special use. And so a lot of the citizen members who aren't developers were like, you know, this seems reasonable to me. And then the developers were like, well, why? I don't understand. I don't think that's reasonable to put this limit as a blanket across the city. And fine, fair enough. I'm not super criticizing the developers, except to say that let's reflect back about the billboards, because the billboard companies came and presented compelling reasons to have more billboards, a public safety interest, just general bit. Aren't we friendly to business? Don't you want more businesses in your community? And, you know, I didn't want more billboards, but those aren't crazy, you know, those are logical reasons to have billboards. But still everybody was like, the same people that are always like, oh, we don't want to pick winners and losers. That would be the most egregious thing that we could possibly do, is pick winners and losers, are more than happy to pick winners and losers when it's the thing that they don't like. And so the billboards, they're like, no, We don't like that. So you lose. And so the same thing with the height requirement with Texas Tech, they were like, well, we don't like it. There's no reason, but we don't like it, so no. And so they didn't recommend any of those. Now we're to the city council meeting the other day where all these came before the council. So basically it came as 2 dockets. There was everything that was recommended. These were all the developer things recommended by planning and zoning. City council went through them one by one and approved every single one to my recollection. Then it gets to these citizen recommended ones and several development related ones. And these were all not recommended. And so by state law, for the city council to approve them, now it takes a supermajority vote of 6 members. And so they go through these one by one. The amendment that we and Ms. Cortez proposed came up. They had kind of unified this into one thing, which wasn't really a great way to do this. And this came up to the floor for discussion. And so they took it up. And right off the bat, councilperson Sheila Patterson Harris was like, well, I think we should do this. People have been harping about this. I went and gave public comment about this. So much to talk about here. Incidentally, I was the only person that gave public comment about this. And surprise, surprise, through this administrative process, they wore down the advocates such that nobody had any desire to go there. So all the advocates that we saw speaking on these things during the earlier meetings are now tired of talking about these same things. So they weren't there. And also people don't have time, like other interests have, to endlessly sit around in city council meetings and endlessly come to council meetings and endlessly ask for the same thing over and over that they've already talked about a million times and presented evidence for a million times. So anyway, Ms. Patterson Harris is like, a lot of people have been asking for this. I think we should do it. Additionally, I think we should create the commission to look into amortization that was a recommendation out of the Planning and Zoning Commission in the original Unified Development Code approval from them. And this is her, she was like, what I don't want to see is that we take this vote today and then we shuffle this under the rug and nothing happens about these things. And she made the point that a lot of these things are allowable and also are consistent with recommendations out of other groups. And she made the point that actually amortization, which looked like it might be struck down by state law, is now been put on hold by a state court and looks to be struck down, and that state law looks to be struck down, so this would still be permissible. Anyway, those were the only comments made about it. Council called the vote. Vote was ultimately that Ms. Patterson Harris, Councilperson Joy, Councilperson McBrayer all voted that they would like to see our amendment approved, and everybody else on the dais voted against that. It didn't get a supermajority vote, and therefore it didn't pass. Same exact thing went down with the Tech Terrace vote, where it was taken up for discussion. There was no real discussion. The council voted it on the same exact lines as our vote, where Patterson Harris, Joy, McBrayer voted for it, everybody else against. That's the entire story and update. I'm sorry it's so long, so many details there. Adam, I know you want to talk about this. Go.
Yeah, so real quick, everybody, I'm gonna give you just 30 seconds here because I got to get right to it. Right, this is the way this played out. Obviously, I'm not very happy about it. I want you to tell your council people I'm about to start talking about. And then on the next one, we're going to talk about a school board person. So I want you to get them in here. I don't want them to say that we didn't give them a chance to say their say. If they have the courage to do that, they're more than welcome to put their comments down in the comment section. I'll answer them right here, right now. So let's get into it. And my beef obviously is the vote, how the vote came down. So first of all, I want to thank Miss Sheila Patterson Harris. She has often won against 5. It's been that way pretty much the whole time she's been on the council. She does what she can do. She makes her statements. I think she makes them well. And she tries to get some collaboration between the city council members around certain things like this whenever the community brings her something. So I want to give her flowers on that for always doing that. And so thank you, Ms. Sheila, for that. Mr. McBrayer, we don't always agree on everything. And we've said that many times on the show. We've also given him his credit many times on the show. But in this instance, I have to give him his credit. He's in District 3. These industrial issues do not affect his district at all whatsoever. And so if he would have voted against it, nobody would have cared from his district probably. And he did it anyway. And I want to say thank you to Mr. McBrayer for that, because this industrial zoning issue is a human rights issue. It's a environmental health issue. And it's a very serious thing. And I thank you for voting in favor of our districts. Councilwoman Joy has often voted in favor of our districts. Again, thank you to her. Her district is District 6, far from these industrial sites, even further than Mr. McBrayer's. She definitely did not have to. A lot of her constituency probably would not care if she did or not. But I think that they looked into their hearts and realized this is just a good thing to do. It's an easy thing to do. And let me give you the real quick explanation, of the amendment I gave. Changing the zoning of where the industrial sites are right now today to transitional, what does that do? It doesn't really do anything at all to those businesses right now. They would be able to continue to operate, but if one of them shut down, you wouldn't be able to have a new use in that place that's an industrial use. And we're talking about the ones right near neighborhoods. We're talking about Chapman Hill. We're talking about Dunbar area. We're talking about Guadalupe area and all of these places. All right. The ones that are right across the street from residential areas. My proposal was to change all of those to transitional. Again, it doesn't do anything right now this second, but what it does is two things. It protects us from future things coming in. And also there's lots of these abandoned lots just sitting there. At any moment, some industrial building or some industrial company could come and put something there in those empty lots that are sitting empty, but they're zoned industrial. So it would protect us from that. It would protect us from more things being able to come in than what's already there. So that's the first thing and the most important thing. The other thing, and another very important thing that I tried to explain to the council and have tried to explain many times, is that it would show the citizens in those districts that you're making a good faith effort to change that situation. And what does that do? In short, it shows those communities that you actually do care about them, because right now, and you've shown it again, the feeling they get from their council is that y'all don't care about districts 1 and 2 and the residents that have to live across the street from a concrete batch plant, across the street from a cottonseed oil plant, and have all these films and dust and noises and lights and crap all around your neighborhood, to where your mothers and your grandmothers can't go out and sit out and enjoy their porch. Your kids can't play outside without getting asthma, highest rates of asthma in the northeast quadrant of the city. This is a human rights, a health issue, public health issue. And we've said over and over, and the council loves to say it when they want to buy a bunch of police cars or a new fire truck or whatever you want. They always say public safety is number one. This is a public safety issue. That is literally the number one job of city council. And so that's what this issue is about. It's not just some vote you just make like it doesn't matter, right? But you did it. And so we're going to talk about it. And so I just want to give those three their flowers before I then go in on the others. And so the same way that we give credit, and we've given credit to probably all of the council members, maybe outside of the mayor. I think we've given, and that's just because he's left us nothing to give him credit on. The first thing he did was change the city council meetings to a less accessible time. The next thing he did was close the pools. And on and on and on. Right. But we've given these other council members their flowers and their due when that's due. Well, now something else is due. So let's first start with Steve Massengale. And Steve Massengale is the council person for District 4, reportedly wanting to run for mayor himself, probably not setting himself up well to do that. This was a very low lift thing for council. Why would he not just do it? He's been on this council through all of this, and he's not made one vote in favor of correcting this industrial site issue in those neighborhoods. Not one in all of his years. So when he gets on the campaign trail and he starts telling y'all about all of the things he's done and all of the years he's been on council, you make sure to remind him that all those years he's been on council, he's not done one thing to rectify this industrial site issue. You know why? He doesn't live there. And he's going to tell you, oh, I have a business there. He does, in the industrial section. He goes nowhere else. He's got no house there. His kids don't have to go to school there. None of his life has to happen there outside of his professional life. So that's him. That's to be expected, honestly, with Mr. Massengale. We've talked about him plenty on this show. Let's move on. Councilwoman for District 5, Dr. Wilson. I couldn't tell you what her reasoning is. I can tell you that she lives nowhere near these sites. I can tell you that her constituency doesn't care about these places. I can tell you that her constituency doesn't give a crap what your life is like in East and North Lubbock. They don't even like you. And I'll just put it out there like that. Most of her constituency doesn't even like you. So there's really not much that needs to be said about that. She chose to do what she did. The mayor is to be expected. And I'm saving one for last. So I don't think I've missed her. But she's the last one because it's the most disappointing one and the most infuriating. So let's go to the mayor. The mayor and city staff or whoever at the city of Lubbock is watching this, send it right to him. I know he's not going to come in here and answer for himself, but send it right to him. Because we're going to put it out on the table right now. What's been happening with the mayor, this current mayor. We've said, I guess, we've criticized him too much. We've called him out too much. He doesn't like us. And so he's being petty, and anything we bring up is just going to instantly be a no for him because we brought it. That's not servant leadership. That's not even leadership. And I don't want these people to confuse being in charge with being a leader because they're two different things, two different skill sets. You can be in charge of something all day and not be a leader. And he's shown himself time and time again to not be a servant leader, if he's a leader at all. He is not a servant leader. He doesn't care about anything but himself. He doesn't even want to do the job. And he said that. He said that out of his own mouth. And if he wants to come contest it, bring him down in the comments. Tell him to send me an email. Tell him to give me a call. He has my number. He can text me. Tell him to call me. He doesn't want to do the job. He didn't sign up for it. That's what he said. So so that's his no vote. Now let's get to the last one. And I know that she's going to have a lot to say, probably not to our face, but we're going to do this because anything that I can say on here, I can say to their face and have in some capacity. But we're going to get to Councilwoman for District 1, where a lot of these industrial sites are at, Christy Martinez Garcia. Now, if you listen to her on the campaign trail, she was going to be all about her community. She was going to fight for her community, no matter what, no matter who liked it. Well, guess what? She got on the council, and it actually does matter who likes it. It does matter. And so, do we know who influenced Councilwoman Martinez Garcia? No, we don't. We don't know. We don't know if that was the industrial site owners that came and took her to coffee and they had a conversation and she felt like they smiled at her 2 or 3 times and so they're okay. They're okay. I'm not going to vote against them. Was it that? Was it somebody else on council that got her on their side? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter because here's what it was. Here's what her vote amounted to. A slap in the face to her own community. And I want District 1 to recognize this and to remember it. Remember it when it comes time to vote and when it comes time to run a council. And not this coming up next election cycle in May, the next one after that. I want y'all to remember that. Because here's what she's going to do. And this is her main thing to do whenever you bring stuff up like to her about doing something about something that's actually her job as a council person. The buck should stop with the council person. With her, it doesn't. There's all sorts of people to pass it on to. It's never her thing to deal with. But what she's going to do is she's going to rattle off a bunch of things that she's done for the community and what her organizations have done for the community and how great she is and how great her organizations are. That's what you're going to hear. And then you're going to hear a bunch of excuses about what she can't do and who else to talk to and all of this kind of stuff. That's what you're going to hear. And so what did we have here? She voted against the interests of her own constituency. And I'm going to tell you right now, Ms. Martinez Garcia, this is why you have such abysmal voter turnout in your district. And we heard it directly from your constituency. A lot of those people didn't show up to the polls because they didn't want to vote for either one of you. But now they're stuck with you. And so when we hear from your own community, because this is where we hear it the most, where they say, oh, we don't vote because every time we vote somebody in, they don't do nothing for us. That's you. That's you. They're talking about you. And I'm more frustrated and mad for your own district than you are. And that's ridiculous. Because we actually work on behalf of your community, and we're going to continue to do so, even far after you're out of that seat. So you can say what you want, because you love to run around and talk about me and other people on my team are going behind your back and trying to tear you down. We don't have the energy nor the desire to do that. Nobody's over here is doing that. You're doing that. Your actions are doing that. You're getting the consequences of your actions. So you want to have a conversation about it? Be an adult and talk to me face to face without yelling. Next time you see me, you want to ask me about it? It's right here on public record. Play it again. Because I'm going to tell you the same thing to your face. You slapped your community in the face and you voted against their interests. And you're keeping them in bad health. You're doing things that are going to keep them in bad health. So I hope that you feel great about that. I hope that whatever friendship or partnership or whatever it was that made you do that vote, I hope it was worth it. Because you can bet that we're going to remind your constituency every chance we get. And you can be mad about it. You can cuss us. You can run around and try to down talk us and try to build coalitions against us. You can do whatever you want. It's what you've been doing anyway. But we're going to tell you like it is. And you let your community down. And so I'm going to tell you for your community because you won't listen to them. I'm going to tell you for your community that you let them down. And it's a shame. And you should be ashamed of yourself for doing it. It doesn't matter if you needed a supermajority and your vote wouldn't have counted. You should have did it anyway. Do you know how many times Ms. Sheila has done that? Where she was the only vote, 1-5? But you couldn't. You couldn't find it in yourself to do it. So you should be ashamed of yourself. We're mad for your own community. So when you talk about all the great things that you do and how great you are, make sure you mention this one. So let's go on to the next thing, because now we're going.
Dude,
let's talk about Estacado.
You're exactly right. While you wipe the blood off your mouth, you know, I think you've said it exactly right. It's so frustrating and disappointing. There's no logical reason behind it. You know, if it were on my conscience, I don't know what I'd do with myself. So I just don't get it, dude. Now,
yeah, we don't
you're
have
gonna
those
tell us. I'm giving the Estacado baton over to you. You know a little bit more about this situation. Tell me about it.
All right, so let's get right into Estacado. And again, I'm going to put it out there, a little 30-second warning. Get Mr. Stubblefield in here. Get him in here. I know a lot of you respect Mr. Stubblefield. That's great. That's great. Call him in here. Let's get him in the comments. Because I don't want him saying that we're talking behind his back either. Because everything I'm saying here, I will say to his face and have said other things to his face. We can respect people and we can also call them out. Nobody's respect outweighs their actions when their actions are detrimental to their community. That's how I feel. So if you feel that somebody has they have so much of your respect that you can't say anything to them when they do wrong, I'm not with that. I'm not with it. So call Mr. Stubblefield in here if he has the courage to do it. I don't think he does. So let's go through it. Let's go through it. Estacado High School, my alma mater, where I graduated from by the skin of my teeth. All right. But it's in the community that I love and that I grew up in, just like the industrial issue. And what I saw in a video over these last couple of days about Estacado, it's just infuriating. It's infuriating. So let's talk about it. A TikTok video was released by Cannon. Cannon is on the board of Lubbock Compact. Cannon is also West Texas Progressive on TikTok. He talks about a lot of social issues and gets the word out about a lot of things. So thank you, Cannon, for bringing this to our attention and putting it out to such a wide audience. So what's happening at Estacado High School right now, and you can go on West Texas Progressive TikTok and you can see that video because there's video evidence of this and photo evidence of this. At Estacado High School, one of the things that's going on is that there was already a sewer problem before the school year started that was never corrected. It was never corrected. So now what you have is a situation where you've got bathrooms boarded up and you've got septic issues leaking into the school. Have any of you out there ever had to attend class with a septic issue, smelling septic, not just a regular bathroom, smelling a septic system? Have you ever had to do that? Do you think it would be easy for you to try to pass your STAR test when you can't even think because of the stench literally stinging your nose? Do you think you could do that? How about at the same time if you have a rat infestation in the school? Because that's what's happening. It may sound like I'm making this up. It may sound like this is like an exaggeration. It's not. There is a rat infestation. So on top of these two things, are those teacher and staff, are they getting help from their LISD school administration? No, they're having to purchase their own rat traps to catch rats because rats are literally running across their lap while they're trying to do their job. And this is something that LISD appears to think is okay. They appear to think there's an answer to this that doesn't include doing something about it. That's what they think. And how do we know that? Because Miss Phyllis Gant, who's in the comments right now, hey Miss Phyllis, she is also a servant leader in the community. And as a servant leader, she has stepped up to help her community. And so she contacted the school board, contacted Dr. Rollo, and all of the relevant stakeholders around the issue that would have the power to do something about it, including the school board person for District 2, Mr. Bill Stubblefield. And what the request was for a public town hall meeting so that the parents, the community could come and ask, first and foremost, what is happening? Why is this? What's going on? And then also to seek some remedy for that, to get these things fixed. They just want their kids to go to school. They just want their kids to go to school and be able to go to school like a normal kid, just like all of you out there. None of you, I guarantee none of your schools have these issues. And so what were the responses back? The response was that Mr. Stubblefield is going to have a private invite-only town hall at his building. His building, the building his organization has. And the request was for it to be at Estacado. The thought being, hopefully some rats will run across it. Hopefully they could go and view the bathrooms and smell that stench. Well, apparently the Estacado is not good enough for Mr. Stubblefield. He doesn't want to go over there. He wants to go to his own building with an invite only because they're going to feed everybody. I'm not making this up. I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds absolutely like I'm just pulling this out of thin air and I've just made up a story for y'all. This is literally what's happening. And we're talking about kids. We're talking about kids. Real quick, Josh. We're talking about kids. This has to do with children. Sure, they're high school kids. They're still children. And none of their high school kids would want to deal with that, and they wouldn't want them to deal with that. So that was the request. That was the response. And real quick, Josh, because I need to give my final thoughts on this. We're about to close out the show, so go ahead.
No. I mean, it's we've seen this before. There's a very frustrating cover your ass sort of mentality amongst this leadership, and like the type of engagement and the type of service that people that we work with all the time want is for people to act with a sense of urgency and seriousness and not bullshitting people. That's like the minimum. Everybody can understand that like things happen, things take time. Sometimes a whole disaster spins out. Like sometimes a thing that's totally out of your control blows up. But like, look at the track record with Friendship High School. Look at the closing of Dupree. Like what the community expects, demands, deserves is the bare minimum floor of acting with a sense of urgency, with a sense of duty, with a sense of responsibility and seriousness about these matters that are so important and so disappointing to it's like gaslighting behavior, because how many of these have we gone to? How many of these have we engaged in that we have heard so-called leadership be like, you're the crazy ones, you're the mean ones, you're the people that are out of order. It's so beyond the pale. Go back, Adam.
Yeah, so here's where this stands. That's been the response. I don't recall when that meeting is supposed to happen, but Phyllis, I'm sure, can put it down in the comments. We're not happy with that. We're not satisfied with that. That's not sufficient. So he can have whoever he wants show up.
Of our Estacado High School is one of the gems and treasures of our city, and that's crazy to me.
Yeah, so we're not happy with that. We're not just going to be content with this private invite only nonsense. And that's what it is, Mr. Stubblefield, nonsense. From what I've seen, what I read in those emails, your response was absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
And we can still be cordial when I see you, if that's what you choose to do, but this is nonsense.
Yeah.
What should have happened, first of all, what should have happened was you should have been like, oh, you should have first of all had a sense of urgency if you weren't aware of this. And well, hold on, let's back up before that. Ground zero. You would be aware of this if you visited those schools.
Yes.
And if you visited those schools and saw that and you didn't do anything, that's negligence. So I can't say you didn't visit or you didn't visit. But if you did visit and see it and you didn't do anything as the person to do something about it, that's negligence. So either way, it's some nonsense. And it should be fixed. It's absolutely unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. There's no other word for it. So you should have went into action. You should have given the people a public town hall meeting like they requested. And at the same time as you're waiting for that town hall meeting to play out, you should be going into action. You should be looking at what needs to happen to get the funding to that facility to bring it up to the quality that the other facilities have. Why? What reason could you give to the people in your district to make them understand that they need subpar facilities, but all the other students in all the other parts of town and all the other districts, they don't need subpar facilities, just us.
Right.
You can't make them understand that. It's not understandable. So this is beyond a slap in the face. This is a spit in the face to your constituents and to your community. And we're on both counts, on city council and Mr. Stubblefield and the rest of the school board. If you think that we're going to go away and leave you alone and stop being mean to you when you're doing things against the community, you're wrong. You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. We have had enough, and we had enough when we formed Lubbock Compact. It's why we formed Lubbock Compact. The people have had enough. That's why Miss Phyllis does what she does on a daily and a weekly basis. That's why Natalie Miller does what she does. That's why Robert Baxter does what he does. That's why all of these people in our communities do what we do and are going to continue to do it until y'all can get it together, or whoever's in that seat. And when you can get it together, you'll probably have a whole lot better relationship with your constituents and the people in your district. And I don't know what's so hard to understand that. I don't know what's in the way of you understanding that, or who's causing you to neglect your own schools. But it's going to stop. It's going to stop at some point. We are not going to stop fighting on behalf of these kids. And that's what you should be doing, Mr. Stubblefield, and you're not doing it. And if you would like to prove me wrong, I would love that. I would love to have to eat every single word of this. I would love to have to eat every single word of it. Because tomorrow, oh, Mr. Stubblefield went and he changed it. Prove me wrong. Let's get it going. Because at the end of the day, and I'll wrap with this because it's 8 o'clock. At the end of the day, our goal is to have the same quality of life in our communities as all of the other communities in the city. If you don't understand that and you don't like that, too bad. We want the same quality of life as every other community, and we're going to have it one way or the other. And so I'll end with that. We're going to keep following this. Oh. Sorry, go ahead, Josh. I'm ending this part of it. We're going to keep following this. We're going to keep letting you know on our social medias. Follow us, Josh, end us off.
No, you said that so well. It deserves, yes, that's the perfect way to close. It's like, if you have power, if you are a person who is empowered, be better. And, in the words of the American treasure, Fred Rogers, if you're a helper out there, folks, let's look at our helpers. Let's lift them up. Let's help them do their work. Let's support them in every way we possibly can. And there's a lot of folks out there who we haven't mentioned today that deserve flowers. If our audience will forbear us 1 minute, we do want to just make a few announcements. One is that this has come up a lot. Folks on our team are working on this. City Bus is looking at revamping their service, and it's going to be a long process. They're doing a lot of community engagement. Fortunately, not at times that are always so amenable. So we are working on this issue, but I do want to tell the community that much like the neighborhood planning process, if they go to mysocialpinpoint.com/Lubbock-Citybus, and we'll put this in the comments. If they miss the community engagement meetings, they can leave their comments about City Bus service. I will say that of what I observed and added to yesterday at City Hall, the commentary that the community is already providing are almost exactly the things that we ourselves would say. And so I think this process is getting good feedback, but we'd love to see more of it. And if you're not able to attend any of those meetings, the last of which was today, you can do that at mysocialpinpoint.com /Lubbock-Citybus. We want to remind folks that the North and East Lubbock Coalition is having a meeting to discuss their complaint that Ms. Dora Cortez and Adam Pirtle were on the show last month to discuss. And so they're having a community meeting to talk to the folks about this and talk about next steps and continue to organize around the issue of resolving this industrial zoning. And they're going to meet Tuesday, October 3rd, 6 p.m. at Catholic Family Charities. With anybody who's interested, we're going to be there talking about our air quality project that is officially underway. We're spending the first dollars of it today. And then I also want to remind people that there is a Texas Commission on Environmental Quality and Leprino Foods meeting on Tuesday, October 24th, 7 p.m. at the American Windmill Museum, where folks can continue to engage on this issue and talk to representatives of the state supervisors for environmental issues and representatives of the company. As always, we are committed to making sure people know how to access the types of public input sessions that they might need to know about to get more information. We're working on this and so much more, folks. It's been a busy month. Adam, thank you for all you're doing out there. You're doing hard work. I appreciate you, co-hosts.
All right. Yeah. So thank you, everybody that is bringing these situations to us. We're going to continue to advocate in solidarity with y'all. Too many to name. So thank y'all. And let's, again, spread this far and wide. Have those people talk directly to me. I don't run from a conversation. I don't run from a debate. I don't run from anything. And so, and Phyllis makes an important point. I want to put this on the public record, because Phyllis makes an important point. She's received threats, public threats, from a brother-in-law of Mr. Stubblefield. And I'm not even going to mention the name, because I'm not going to give them that honor. But what I can tell you is that none of that is going to work on any of us. None of it. None of it. We will have the same quality of life in this community. And even if you came from this community and you want to ride against it, we're still going to do it. And so none of that is going to stop us. And that's just it. Come and see me, come talk to me, and we can have a conversation. Because I'll tell you the same thing to your face, Mr. Stubblefield. I'll tell you the same thing to your face, Miss Christy Martinez Garcia, and anybody else I named in here. I will say the same thing to your face. I doubt you'll have the conversation, because y'all not showed the courage to do that. And if you had the courage, you would do that and face the criticisms. And if you were a servant leader, you would take those criticisms and make change, and not make blame and make excuses and get offended and get defensive. Because that's what leadership is, not just being in charge. So with that, I'll leave it. Thank you, everybody. Sorry I got a little heated on this one. This is all passionate stuff. It hits very close to home, and it's a serious issue in our community. And I hope everybody else takes it that seriously. So thank you. I'm going to go calm down. Josh, thank you. And we'll see y'all next time. Good night.
Gotta be said. Later.